welcome to NAB 2022. Thank you for coming. We're talking about virtual production, the BTS of the making of Sony Pictures' Kilian's game. I'm Dan Perry with Sony, and joining me is Yoshi Takashima, Vice President, Advanced Technology, Sony Pictures. Daniel De La Rosa, Vice President, Post-Production, Sony Pictures. Matt Litwiller, Director, and Will Trowbridge, Producer. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining. When you first made the call to me, we said, hey, we're doing this thing. I was so happy to be able to hear that we were going to do a project. Yoshi, can you tell us a little bit about what this project is?
Yeah, sure. So this Kilian's game is funded by Sony Content Technology Strategy Committee, which is just formed last year during the pandemic. The mission is to focus on creating commercial-grade content, testing a lot of Sony technologies, and then also work with the external partners, industry experts to work together. And that group is chaired by myself and then another engineer from PlayStation. And we have members from Sony Music, Sony PCL Japan, who made virtual production for this project, and a lot of Sony electronics and other engineers. And this is the very first project to announce. So very happy to be here today.
Thank you, and it really excites me when you think of the power of Sony and everything that we could bring to the table and everybody coming together. Let's take a quick look at some of the videos from Kilian's game.
So Kilian's Game is a neo-noir film kind of inspired by 70s films like Chinatown or The Long Goodbye.
So the film is meant to be kind of a real-world test of Sony technologies in the context that they would actually be used out in the film room.
This is one of my dreams, actually. I've been in the studio for 9 years, but it's very rare for engineers who is testing advanced technology to be on set.
The purpose of this project is to bring several key Sony technologies into play in a production setting.
So we used the new Venice 2 and then the AirPeak drone that they're coming out with, but then we also were testing remote production with the new exciting wall they've built in Japan for future remote production shoots. And then we used a lot of remote tools also. Being in the pandemic, we worked in the cloud for editing, and then we streamed everything on set for Japan to watch and vice versa.
Good? Awesome. Daniel, can you tell us a little bit about which products were used when you guys made this?
Sure. So we used the AirPeak drone using the A7S Mark III. The Venice 2 camera was also used, as well as the Xperia Pros for streaming, as the piece mentioned, using the Meetmo service. And then finally, the PCL stage in Japan, their virtual production stage using the newest Sony CLED Series B panels were brought to bear, and we were able to shoot an entire scene over on that stage.
And you just mentioned the AirPeak. It wasn't even released at that point, if I remember correctly. Let's take a look at the video showing us a little bit about AirPeak.
Beginning of Kilian's Game, we wanted to feel sort of like the opening of a feature film. You know, there's some time to build some mystery before you really dip into the story. And the drone served as kind of this floating perspective that would help us build tension into the first scene.
We started our day by chasing the picture car up the hill. The speed of the drone is really helpful.
The fact that you can change the aperture and you have control on the camera setting while the drone is in the air is a very nice feature.
So one of the great things about the AirPeak drone is you can use the Sony Alpha cameras, which allow you to match to a Venice 2 with a super cinematic look on a small form factor.
It's interesting when you talked about the open and how the AirPeak played that part. As filmmakers, how does, like, when you see a new technology, do you begin to think about how can I use that?
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, this project as a whole was really excited to be able to use unreleased tools and new technologies. The AirPeak was great because it was a small form factor, but in the opening of the film, we intercut it with the Venice. So some of the car shots are the overhead perspective, kind of floating, and then we cut to drive-bys and other on-the-ground shots with the Venice, and it intercuts really beautifully.
And when it cuts together, your background's in post. How important is that to be able to have cameras that cut together like they did?
For me, it's very important. And so I like the fact that Sony's got this kind of color DNA that permeates through the entire line, whether it's the Sony Alpha cameras, the FX line, and also the the kind of the granddaddy of the Venice and the Venice 2. And so being able to shoot in the Sony color profiles, and then being able to take it into the color grading suite and actually match them really well is a big boon to kind of content creators all around.
Excellent. And we mentioned the Venice 2 was used. It was when we started looking at the production schedule, and we realized that we would have a prototype of the Venice 2 available. It was very exciting. We came over, we tested a little bit, and I say a little bit. But you took footage from the Venice 2, you took footage from the Alpha camera, and took that back and looked at it, just to make sure. And I think, how important is it for testing and things like that when you guys jump onto a new project and you're starting to get involved? How important is that testing process?
Yeah, I mean, very important, and especially when you're choosing lenses to then match, and you want to see, how's this camera going to intercut with this camera, with these, because we had different sets of lenses on the drone and then on the Venice 2. And obviously you want your cinematographer to feel comfortable with the tools he's going to be using. So it was very important to Doug to be able to get his hands on things ahead of time. So, yeah.
And Doug is in Greece enjoying a nice, well-deserved vacation. But how does, in that kind of, as you have your cinematographer, you have post-production, how do you guys coordinate that?
Yeah. I mean, it's, I don't know, funny enough, Matt, it was one of the editors as well on this project, so it was easy to coordinate in that Matt was there from the beginning, from ideation, and even on the production side, working with Sony alongside myself and our co-director, Colin Davis, to really dream up this project all the way through delivery. So he was there through color grading, sound mix, and everything in between. So it was incredibly easy to coordinate this time around, but that's not always the case. Truly, it's an exercise in just collaboration, right? We work with incredible people with all this unique skill sets and find ways to ensure by the time they are ready to execute on that skill set, they have the information they need, whether it's by testing up front or having plenty of meetings over the course of the months of working together so that when the day does come, we're able to really deliver.
Yeah.
I think when we look at, you mentioned the sound. It was nice because not only was there the technology part, but Sony Sound was involved. Can you tell us a little bit about the sound production?
If I may, so this time we took the opportunity to use all end-to-end Sony Pictures sound facilities, donating all of the time. So we did a composing, scoring, ADR, 40, and then mixing in one of the big, our mixing stage. So everything was done in a high-level Hollywood studio quality, and then opportunity was there together. And then they're so happy to kind of come together. Even I was the first time to stay at the scoring stage to score together. Yeah. So that was a good moment as a committee's activity to learn about how we make a movie, what technology we need to kind of make it further better. Yeah, that was the essence of this project. So anyone could join all of the sessions if we want to. Yeah.
And I think
it's there in the Hollywood community. But.
And then we have a little clip here. I think we mentioned the Venice 2. Let's take a look at the Venice 2.
This is my first time using the Sony Venice 2. We didn't get much chance to test beforehand, but it performed extremely well, worked perfectly, worked like a dream. The internal RAW recording was amazing. The camera performed super well in low light. The skin tones looked beautiful. The new color profile, the S709, looked great.
And that was that internal recording and making the camera a little smaller. I think that's really Sony listening and being able to deliver some of the improvements that we hear from filmmakers, and it's what lessons I think did Japan, did they come back with understanding and going through a full process? How valuable was that?
You're talking about the Venice particularly, or
the whole project?
You know, I think it's Daniel kind of went through, like, this is a process from production, post-production, and finishing, and everything. And then we kind of asked the volunteers who want to participate from Japan. The Sony PCL was a big part for virtual production, but then all other R&D and then Xperia phone team came up with what they can do together. And then after that, yeah, if you have a Sony team, yes. Otherwise, we look for other expertise in the industry, like Fuse FX for virtual production. So that was the process. So maybe it took like 3 months to really find who does what, but then after that was all smooth. Yeah.
I'll add to that too. We had a really great partner in Sony PCL, and PCL is based in Japan, stands for Photochemical Lab. Kind of ironic that they're doing virtual production, but times change. And so they were a great partner, and we really worked with them kind of every step of the way from kind of the concept. Matt and Will and Colin were all involved with working with them, and then just kind of making sure they were in the know. So when it came time to shoot their piece, everything came together, and when you see the final content, it looks pretty seamless.
And let's take a look at some of the remote production you guys are able to do.
We're also testing the Xperia Pro 5G phone. We really want to harness the power of 5G to be able to remote stream to somebody in another location.
What it does is allows us to extend Video Village beyond just a couple hundred feet. We can do the couple hundred feet, and we can go thousands and thousands of miles. In this use case, Tokyo is already watching us real time and not minutes later.
So Japan was able to watch what we were doing in LA, and then we got to watch Japan work during their set. The video quality was incredible. You could see what they were seeing through the camera, and then also we could see behind the scenes of like how the set was lit and how the shot was being executed and everything.
So you were able to see the output, but you also see how the scene was being executed. How did that go about?
Yeah, so we basically were able to log in, and then we just had a live feed of what their Venice was looking at through the lens. So then, we could kind of see what was being shot, but then there were people walking around with witness cameras that we were able to see kind of how they were working. That was really important, because if you wanted to throw out an idea, say you're like, oh, what if the camera moved over here, but then you see in the witness camera they're on a dolly track and that's not going to happen. You kind of get a sense of how they're working, and then how you can be helpful if there's anything to suggest, or even if you just want to see what's going on. And there were a couple cool instances where we were able to throw out an idea here or there that was helpful, and then otherwise we were just able to stay in the loop on how things were going over there.
Yeah, we were on a Teams meeting the whole time, viewing all these different cameras, being able to switch through them on our end in Los Angeles, as well as make requests to talk to SK, who was our Japan unit director, to chat through a problem they were trying to solve, or if you had a question about maybe how we were framed based in when we shot the content in LA, we could really do that. There was obviously tapping into a fast-moving set like they had in PCL was a bit of a thing. Like, you have to kind of find the right time to add a suggestion rather than trying to overcomplicate things. So yeah, we largely just stood back and watched, and were just incredibly impressed with how they operated. I think we did have a few moments of just kind of verbal back and forth, but the rest of it, SK and team really handled on their own.
Yeah, and it was important too, because as you'll see, we basically shot in the same space, and then they were recreating that space. So there had to be a similar language in how the camera was moving, so that you didn't get disoriented in where you were. And it took a lot of planning ahead of time, and they did an amazing job, really. This is what the shot's going to be. Here's the storyboard and the overheads, and so we really felt confident going into it. But it's great to be able to see it live.
Yeah, speaking to that a little bit more, SK and his production team just kind of illustrated exactly what was going to happen with every single shot, with every single blocking of where the actors were going to be doing during each, so that we all knew going into that exactly what was going to come out of it. But of course, they added their own flair and throughout the production. So it really did feel like their take on Kilian's game, which is really why we did it. They brought their own unique perspective to an existing script, an existing story, which really took it to the next level.
Let's take a closer look at the stuff shot at PCL.
So one of the biggest things we wanted to test on this shoot was the brand new LED wall they built in Japan to recreate a set that we had actually shot on in real life here in the States. So you get to the desk, you're pulling out the letter and you're reacting. That's kind of the moment there.
Today we're filming on set, and then they're going to scan the set that we've just worked on. That's going to go to Fuse FX.
We start by receiving a LiDAR scan of the location. We take that into our VFX pipeline at Fuse FX, and we convert that into a virtual environment, which then we can provide to the team in Japan, and they're able to shoot with that virtual environment on their LED volume.
The communication was very important, and we've always talked with Fuse FX and Sailor team to make sure the color is correct.
So for today, just talking about the creative, how it looks, see if we're in the ballpark for lighting and the fire sequence, and if there's anything else we want to change before we start sending files your way later this week.
One of the things that was interesting about writing for the LED wall is we sort of wrote carefully. We didn't want to push the boundaries too much because we weren't sure exactly how it was going to respond. And we found that when they did the actual shoot, some of the things that we were careful about, they could actually achieve at a much higher level than what we were expecting. So next time we approach a project like this, we'll kind of know, you really can get away with a lot more than you think.
That's a great comment. I think going into it, it's wise to make sure we're going to be able to accomplish what we know. But going through that now, and what do you see as the main things you would push a little harder or a little further?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, a great example, and you'll see in the final clip when we watch the end of the film. It was PCL who suggested that we use a fire effect, and that never crossed our mind because, when writing, we're still thinking physically. Like we're not going to light this mansion on fire, and I don't know how. We don't have a CG budget to, light this mansion on fire, so that's not going in the script. And then when they suggested it, they're like, oh no, we just build it into the Unreal Engine model, and then we can control the parameters on set, make sure we dial it in, and it looks good, and it looked great. And I think, there's skepticism that it looked good. And now that we've seen that you can really get at a high level with your end products with a virtual background, I think we'll be willing to push it further in our writing as far as, what we think we could pull off visually.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the things is as much as we talk about virtual production, and it's still in its early stages, but there's nothing like doing it. Mm-hmm. And from that doing it, how are you now like, okay, I'm going to now do this differently, or now it opens up different creative to me? Is that something now that's on the table?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, well, first off, I got to shout out Daniel. I think Daniel was the one who threw in the fire suggestion. And we were all like, okay, yeah, that sounds great. Let's burn it down. Coming from Sony, that sounds fantastic to us. And then it was as easy as just adding some flames in the Unreal Engine project, which turned out looking great. So, but just thinking about that alone, I mean, it's all about adding elements. And we were thinking more along the lines of like, we're going to capture this environment. We had obviously on a location in Los Angeles. It was in Silver Lake that we captured the interior of, turned into a 3D model, and then obviously displayed that on the LED volume in Tokyo. But we really ended our kind of we stopped imagining after that. We were like, that's what it's going to look like. And we're going to spend as much time as it takes to make sure it looks incredible. Really adding anything to it really never crossed our minds. Like adding something that truly could be
a story element.
Yeah. Like the flames unto themselves. Like we just didn't ever think, okay, we can just add something to this that didn't exist in LA. So I think now knowing that, maybe we would have added more or played with more of the capabilities of that Unreal Engine file and taken the story in potentially a new direction. But of course, we're very happy with the direction it went.
Yeah, and I mean, I think also learning a lot about lighting within the Unreal model. You know, like we shifted the scene that was shot in Japan to early morning, right? So we shot late evening, so the sun's facing one direction, and then they go early morning, the sun's facing another direction in the virtual environment, and so it's just, you can globally shift lighting, and it just creates all sorts of even scheduling advantages, because you're like, okay, let's shoot a night interior now, let's shoot a day interior, let's, you know, so. Yeah, it's very cool.
I think the other thing that kind of contributes to the consistent look between the practical and the virtual production pieces is that we were able to use Venice 2 in both locations, so Venice 2 in LA and Venice 2 in Tokyo, and same lenses. So Kowa anamorphics were used to shoot the both LA and Tokyo pieces as well. So I think that really helped it make it look like it's just one continuous scene or shot in the same physical space when actually it wasn't. So
one thing I want to add is actually two things actually. Is that one is that this production was under pandemic, so it was given condition how we can do work together in Japan and LA. We never meet each other, but have to trust each other.
Right.
The other thing is that Sony Pictures Japan really want to become like a global production house. Then this is a good project to work with the LA Hollywood communities, and so that they can show what they can do, and then also give them more like a Japanese actor acting in a Japanese gang actually there to act in like their culture centric. So they wanted to really show they can do like a Tokyo-based production for the Hollywood movie as a test.
yeah, we think it's the first time that they actually shot Tokyo for LA. Usually they try to find places in LA that look like Japan and shoot it, make it look like Japan, but this time Tokyo was shot for LA, so very nice.
And you mentioned getting the same camera and lenses, so a little bit of prep on the front end to make sure that both things are available. But I think you guys also took some practical pieces over there as well to help.
Yeah. So, and it took a lot of planning as far as, you know, you have to think about what props are being interacted with by the actors. So ahead of time, you know, we staged it on our shoot, and then we're like, okay, these things are going to need to be shipped to Japan so that they can, or they're going to have to find a way to replicate it on their end. And for instance, they had to replicate the desk, and they did a great job. They found a really good match, and you don't even think twice about, you know, what desk you're looking at. So it does take planning as far as how the actors move within the space and what they're going to interact with. But it's good to kind of be forced to plan a little more. So yeah.
I think what was really cool is we, of course, saw it last week at Sony Pictures, and I was in the story, and I didn't even think about the part at the end, which was the virtual stuff. It didn't even dawn. I didn't even look for it, and I was supposed to be looking for it. Yeah. And I'm like, wow, that's pretty good. I know it's there, but I didn't even. After I'm like, oh, that's right. That was all shot in Tokyo. So it was really, I think, just amazing to be able to collaborate remotely and do those things that a lot of times in person it makes it so much easier. But I think that was really dictated by the pandemic. But the tools were there, and now you kind of leverage those tools, which was great. Yeah. Anything else from the virtual production piece that you were either shocked or anything that really impressed you that kind of like, oh, I really want to do this more?
I think that just experiencing it and going through the production process with just building a real environment, like something that really needed to simulate something that existed, just kind of covering the bases on that and getting comfortable in that space may open up at least my imagination around what's possible when it comes to shooting in any existing place in the globe. You just need to get LiDAR and photogrammic scans of it, obviously pull that into Unreal Engine and create a 3D model and all those things. But the fact that you can be in a stage in Tokyo and have it look exactly like the interior of a space in LA makes me just think I can do that for any space, right? And think about any possible backdrop or environment that I might want to produce a picture in. It really opened up that. And then thinking too about, I know we were talking after about an example in which we might want to use a stage for an underwater scene, right? You don't have to have it be something that is physical either. It can more so use it for atmospheric scenes, or just kind of taking ideas in a more surreal direction, knowing that at the switch of a button you can change that backdrop, that scene, and that place that your actor might be in.
I think too. Like now I go somewhere, I do the LiDAR, I leave. If I have to do pickups where I don't have access to that location,
right?
Yeah. That's there for me. And as filmmakers, you build up this library of locations. Yeah. And because you have the ability to change some of that after, even though it's the same location, you say, hey, we need this one scene. We'll just grab that and make some changes in Unreal. It seems like it's really liberating that all of a sudden now it opens up
It's a great point that you make. I mean, I think Yoshi and I talked at length about the future uses of this asset as well, and making sure that we get a full 3D, high quality asset so that Yoshi and Daniel and team can go and use it in a bunch of other instances outside of just Kilian's game.
Yeah, because I was managing budget, there was a different 3 quotes, and do you want just this 3 shot in a script, or you want to have like an entire 3D model? And then since this was a test project, we just wanted to have an entire room. Then PCL ended up with like shooting, 7 different angles. They can do any camera work because we have a full 3D model. So yeah, that was very important to have capture the entire location. Then any creative camera work can be done afterward. And future project.
It has the potential to help you overcome a lot of logistics, right? So whether it's you can't get to a place for a reshoot, or you can't get to a place because it's too expensive, or maybe it's just not practical to go there, or like Will was talking about, like you don't want to go shoot in a huge pool, but you want to fake an underwater environment, so.
And you guys mentioned shifting time of day. That seems like that's kind of important, because either you could shift it to make it different, or you could match, and you go back. So that's really interesting that it's not only matching but also changing it to make it appear different.
Yeah, and the thing we did with that too to help sell it is that we actually took plate shots that you'll see, establishing shots of our characters walking in, and you can see it's kind of that early morning, kind of early morning twilight hour. So that helps, I think, sell the lighting also in the virtual production space as well.
Yeah.
And then you guys use Sony C to be able to exchange the video and have everybody collaborate. How was that experience?
Yeah. I mean, we loved it. Yeah, we really did. Yeah.
Big fans.
There's so many different, online collaboration tools now, but you could tell it was built for our use case, for production and for filmmakers. So even just not just having file management, but then be able to create very simply, like the interface for creating shareable links and who can have access to it was like very simple, which is something you have to deal with all the time when you're, as an editor, when you're trying to get edits to people. And you always inevitably get an email like, hey, give me access, and like, blah, blah, blah. And then, but then also like having review tools built into it. And it handles upload and download really well, like with Aspera plugins and stuff, so yeah.
Yeah, we put everything from Camera Raw, BTS, even the VFX assets were all housed in Sony C, and to Matt's point, made it easy to share with everybody, not just on the LA side, but also on the Japan side, so they could easily get access relatively quickly once it was all pushed up.
And again, you mentioned the review, then there was people from Japan and the US reviewing at the same time.
Right.
Yeah,
then,
we had it.
Then another, going forward, this is like a Sony IP, so we can reuse for any kind of R&D or a new project. So it's a lot of, maybe tens of people already group asking the contents access to a very particular Unreal Engine project. Particular still, it's very capable of C, linking on any media box going through. Yeah, very easy to manage tens of projects.
And let's take a little longer look at Kilian's game.
It's never that simple.
Clearly not.
I really am sorry about your loss. Maybe you ought to leave tonight, considering everything.
Maybe you're right. Good luck, Mr. Thompson. Whatever's in there and wherever it takes you, I hope I never see you again.
I understand.
Salud.
It was time to leave. I knew it, and so did she. She left that night, and just in time. They came the next day.
あのままおれへんがな。誰かチン殺しやがったんか。わかんねえ。机の中見てみましょうよ。あそこありますよ。キリアンの野郎、シルビアに会うたんかもしれんな。後悔させてやりましょうよ。今よりもっと。燃やしちまえ。
They knew what I knew, but they didn't know what Nico knew. Only I did.
What a great clip. That really kind of brings, I think, together everything we've been talking about. Anything out of that clip that kind of speaks to you guys that you're really proud of or really impressed with?
Well, yeah, I mean, I would also shout out, Colin couldn't be here today, but he's my co-director, co-writer. We do everything together, so, you know, we spent a lot of time together on this. I mean, I think we were just so impressed with how well it matched and the work that Sony PCL did. It was really, I mean, we were coming from more of an, you know, our references were mostly American films, a lot of, you know, neo-noir. And then talking with SK and the team over there, they were referencing a lot more Japanese films and also from the 70s, so same time period, but two totally different places. And the way that it kind of came together was really cool, yeah.
And one of the shots with the female lead with the bright backlight, I mean, that's amazing to be able to see that kind of level of detail with that bright source behind her.
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess speaking to that window also, so I mean, it looked great in the physical space with the Venice 2, but then when you look at it when you're watching the Japan scene, the power of the wall to be able to dolly and still create parallax outside the window with the model, so you can feel the sheer of the curtains, you can feel the trees moving behind them. It just really sells the space that, you know, you're physically there. So the window kind of was a great place for us to kind of play with a lot of that stuff.
And I think the other thing is you guys had varied skin tones in there, and they all looked remarkably represented very well. How did you guys feel about the skin tones?
Yeah, I mean, great. Yeah, I mean, inside, outside, the Venice did a great job, and I think Doug was really happy with them. And we actually, I mean, you could talk a little more about this, Daniel, but we graded on the B-Series Wall 2 in HDR, which was its own experience to be able to grade on a large screen in HDR. So it was cool to work with the skin tones at that, you know, level of fidelity. So, yeah.
And you guys mentioned burning down the mansion. Do we have budget for that in the future to do another project? What
Virtually,
do you
yes.
think's coming?
Virtually, yes.
Oh, we're not gonna burn it down. What else? What do you have on tap? What's coming up?
I like to actually thank Jack for making a very great like a BTS video, because it is important. If you watch the movie, you don't know how it's been made. So for Sony, it's very important to capture, document how we made this project and going forward. And then, as I mentioned, this was the very first project for this committee. So yeah, we were looking for a new project, both traditional content entertainment and new domain like cross entertainment for like music or game. Those are the new projects we are just about to start. So really looking for working with you in NAB audience, anyone to kind of help Sony to drive those initiatives.
Excellent. I think we're running almost out of time. Is there anything else that you would like to add before we close it up?
I mean, echoing kind of Yoshi's points, I think like the BTS is equally important as the final piece, just because it serves as a documentation of the process. And one of the things that was kind of my personal goal for this project was just being able to bridge that gap between the Sony R&D engineers in Japan and worldwide, as well as the creative, of Matt and Colin and Will, and just trying to get them kind of what I kind of coined unprecedented access to the creative process, so they can see from script development to storyboard all the way through production, VFX, and post, kind of the process. And we tried our best to document that all the way through. And so, like I mentioned earlier, we're hoping that it will serve as that kind of a test bed of data for kind of future projects going forward. So,
And on the BTS, I think we had to give somebody a shout out for doing some.
Oh yeah,
lighting.
Jacqueline right there. Reina.
Jack's right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it did look beautiful, and I think doing that BTS, even as filmmakers, if you're not doing for Sony, I think it's really important just to capture it in as the best quality you can afford to do, because that BTS is so important for everybody to understand, especially when you're in the moment and we hear what you guys are thinking. I think that really comes back to us as a manufacturer to be able to understand right in the moment, what did you guys do, how did you do it, what did you like about it, because our engineers are listening. They are listening, and when they hear or see something and it really makes sense and it clicks, and as you see, we have drones, we have small cameras, large cameras, we have walls, we have reference monitors. It's really a point where Sony can leverage everything, and these types of projects brings us together. We could be in an org chart and do stuff and be brought together as an organization, but doing something like this with this type of collaboration is good. So we really thank you for all your efforts to make this happen.
Yeah, I mean, it was really special to be able to work on this. We were so glad to be brought in, and we really could see the enthusiasm of all the, because there were so many different departments involved, and everyone was equally excited to help out and bring their expertise to things. And I'd encourage everyone, you can see the BTS and the film online, so it's about 7 minutes, the film, so check out the whole thing.
Where can we find the film?
Yoshi?
Oh, we have a few websites. One is the Sony technology site. You can maybe type like a Sony technology, then you can get. And then the other one is Future Proof. That's another Sony brand site. It's kind of more focused on younger audience, but then very much interesting videos from them.
You'll see some different videos on the Future Proof site. Just Google Sony Future Proof and you'll get to that as well.
And I think if you just Google Kilian's game on YouTube, you should be able to find that as well. And then
as of today, yes.
Then if you want to see it on a C level, we'll just ship one out, and that way you can see it properly. So just need to know your address, and we'll send it out to you. Great. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for everything.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Dan.
Well done.